In 2022, the Improvement Service received funding from the Scottish Rural Network to identify barriers to understanding and addressing child poverty in remote, island and rural settings. While statistics suggest child poverty is relatively low in many remote and rural areas, lived experience suggests something more complex is happening, with many people reporting increasing deprivation as a result of remoteness, lack of employment opportunities, and a sharply elevated cost of living.
We have some very small island communities here with a fair number of people living quite close to the edge. They're maybe doing 2 or 3 part-time jobs and just about managing until something goes wrong. And we saw that happening right at the start of lockdown when residents in our smaller isles couldn't get on the ferry to go to the supermarket and couldn't afford to buy food in their local shops, which have got high freight costs to cover, quite understandably.
The Improvement Service wanted to gain a better understanding of that reality and to start chipping away at the barriers rural councils face when trying to understand, reach and support families who are struggling financially. Given the difficulty of the task, we didn't want to create a talking shop or focus only on the problems. We wanted to help local and national government identify meaningful and lasting solutions for low-income families. For this reason, we decided to take a design-focused approach. Just as a person designing a car seeks lots of perspectives from drivers, engineers, regulators, etc., we wanted to involve a wide range of partners and to define the problems from the perspective of low-income families. Involving academics, local officers, data and intelligence experts, and those representing lived experience, we held 4 online workshops in swift succession. This series of events was described as an intelligence sprint and identified 4 major problems that local areas wanted to overcome. Problem 1. National top-down data on child poverty often misses a lot of low-income families in remote areas because they just don't show up in local statistics, especially if neighbouring houses, villages and towns are more affluent. If we don't know they're there, we can't reach them. Problem 2. There is a lot of confusion about when information on households can be shared between teams across local government to allow families to be contacted and support to be offered. So even when local partners know that families might benefit from support, they can't always reach them. Problem 3. The way child poverty is measured often focuses on income, not outgoings. This can be problematic in remote, rural and island settings, where the cost of living pushes families into hardship, even when their incomes wouldn't suggest they are experiencing poverty. Problem 4. It can be hard to engage families with direct experience of poverty in remote and rural areas because of practical barriers like poor transport links and an increased sense of stigma and visibility in small communities. Once we had identified those priorities, we published an overview report available on the Improvement Service website and established a remote, rural and island child poverty network to explore what the solutions might be and to take them forward. Among others, the group included representatives from Orkney, Shetland Islands, the Scottish Borders, Perth and Kinross, Moray and Dumfries and Galloway. The group brought together committed individuals and authorities from across Scotland with expertise across data and intelligence, information governance, welfare rights, community engagement, service delivery and policy. Everyone was determined to work together to make a difference for children living in poverty. So what has been achieved? The network's most significant gains have been around using data to identify and understand those most in need of support. Local areas use the network to showcase and discuss their own practice, and all those videos are available on the Improvement Service website. Participants also took inspiration from existing models of practice and built on them for reuse in their own areas. Many took inspiration from Scottish Borders, which had layered very localised child poverty data with local benefit data, including uptake of free school meals, school clothing grant and education maintenance allowance to enrich their map of local need. This has informed local decisions about how resources are allocated in the Borders. The Improvement Service has also supported many local areas to replicate this approach in the local child poverty action reports. The network enabled others to learn from and build upon this approach.
I was fortunate enough to be part of the rural network looking at child poverty, and there was a presentation made by Scottish Borders Council that kind of set something alight in me. They looked at more localised poverty within the borders, and the work that had been done there was a phenomenal piece of work. So I went away and I had a look at what they'd done, and I looked at what other information was around and whether there's anything we had locally that could contribute to that information to try and build us a picture. Did a bit of research, collected data internally, collected data from the largest food bank in Moray itself, and looked at the DWP data for things like carers allowance, disability living allowance, personal independence payments. These fields were factored together, which produced the tables that could say, well, the ones with the lowest scores were the likely areas with the most vulnerabilities or highest levels of poverty deprivation. Yeah, it's been an eye-opener for me. It's challenged preconceived ideas of what we think poverty would be within Moray. Some raised some eyebrows, kind of challenged some members of elected members to think, well, I need to think more about my area now, because this is identifying that I have higher levels of vulnerability, poverty in my area than I actually thought.
The Improvement Service research team also took inspiration from the Scottish Borders, using their approach as the starting point to understand where child poverty seems to be high, but uptake of local educational benefits, such as school clothing grant, is low. This could prove to be a valuable tool in identifying pockets of unmet need where resources might be targeted.
One of the key pieces of learning has been building on work done by Scottish Borders Council to develop a child poverty index, which gives a more kind of robust and full picture of child poverty within small areas within their council. But we thought, I guess, having discussions around what else we could do with that data and with that index, we could bring in actually a bit more kind of analysis to identify unmet need and address areas where uptake of clothing grant or free school meals or education maintenance is lower than expected. So hopefully by doing that, by taking that a step further, we've produced something that can be translated into action to hopefully tackle child poverty.
Cost of living. The group has also explored what mechanisms can be used to understand and reduce the cost of living in remote and rural areas. Through its involvement in the network, Argyll and Bute developed a bid and secured funding to explore how external datasets could be used to understand how the cost of living is impacting on its families. It is currently embarking on a one-year evaluation project funded by the Scottish Government's Child Poverty Accelerator Fund to better understand how this data can provide insights and whether it could be replicated across Scotland.
Over the coming months, we aim to use the datasets this funding has given us access to in order to check for gaps in our understanding of the needs of our communities. Actionable insight gained from this analysis could help our welfare rights team to encourage more uptake of the support available by those in our communities who most need it.
Data sharing. Through the network, we also brought in the expertise of SAVI. This stands for the Scalable Approach to Vulnerability via Interoperability. This is an organisation of data governance experts funded by the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, which is now working with 3 Scottish local authorities, connected through the Remote Rural Network, to provide them with clarity and confidence in how they use the data they have to reach out to households most vulnerable to child poverty. The hope is that, if successful, this approach could be replicated across Scotland.
So by taking the SAVI approach, the local authorities have defined a new vulnerability purpose on which basis that we expect that they'll be able to reuse personal data in new ways to address rural child poverty. Our hope is that the SAVI standards enable councils to reach out to families who may need support in a way that the use of data is legal, ethical and transparent, which is also then replicated across local authorities in Scotland.
Perhaps the most stubborn problem we identified was of how to engage people with lived experience of child poverty, both to understand need and whether council interventions are having an impact. This is an area of maximum complexity, and there is still a long way to go to ensure we understand the need of families experiencing poverty and can support them in the right way.
In the longer term, I'd say the network has been really helpful in raising awareness with the Scottish Government of the difficulties we have in meeting national guidelines for reporting. Because with such a small population, we can't report on some indicators because you could identify individuals, and it wouldn't be meaningful anyway, especially for things like equality data. For example, our survey on making ends meet, which was with families in hardship, generated responses from 43 families, which might not seem many to a bigger authority, but they told us a lot about their personal circumstances, which was really valuable in planning our strategy. But obviously, the quantitative side of the analysis isn't going to be statistically robust with such small numbers. I'd say Scottish Government now has a much better appreciation of the value of qualitative data like ours in reporting on child poverty, and we have the network to thank for that.
All the materials produced through this project are available on the Improvement Service website. If you're interested in getting involved in the Remote and Rural Child Poverty Network, please don't hesitate to get in touch.